Namaste, everyone, and welcome to Alion's Joy. I am so glad you are here today. Welcome, welcome. It is a wonderful afternoon. And, well, are you a mess because of stress? That's what we're going to talk about today. I do talk about stress a lot with you because I cannot say it's one of my favorite topics, but it's the topic of the hour, right? It is a sign of the times. It is something that I experience with my clients a lot. My clients come to see me because I am a midlife and transformation coach and help people, especially with stress and anxiety. And it is just one of these things that is ongoing right now and that we have to deal with and kind of dissect. And the better we understand it and the better knowledge we have about stress and depression and the things that cause it and the things that it does to us, right? The better informed we are. So I want to share some things with you today that are stress related. Everybody has it and everybody goes through it. And so this is some of the things that I want to share with you because I mean, what else is there? Your health is your wealth, right? And the fact that we are sometimes stressed out, it is a normal part of life. I say that a lot, I talk about it a lot, and I discuss different things about stress, sometimes where it comes from, sometimes what we can do about it, sometimes both, sometimes what it does in the workplace, sometimes like just a couple of weeks ago, my friend Katina Smith talked on my show about stress at the workplace, and she has a great book out about it, so check that out. And Katina Smith, so she was on my show a couple of weeks ago, and I keep drawing back to stress because I keep reading about it and I keep researching and I keep finding it in the information that comes to you. So all the things that I go through, I share with you, and that I do with my clients, I share with you. And sometimes I say stress can really also motivate you, right? So there's a different form of stress. It can be what I call that exciting anxiety. Is stress and anxiety can motivate you, right? Anxiety a little bit about tomorrow and what's going to happen. It can motivate you to get a promotion at work or to run the last marathon that you really want to accomplish and participate in. But if you don't handle it well and it becomes long term, then it can seriously interfere with your job, your family life, your health. And that is the most important thing. I always come back to that health. I always come back to the mind, body, spirit part of it, right? If we don't take care of our body, then these things, that stressful stuff in your mind, might manifest in your body. More than half of Americans say they fight with friends and loved ones because of stress. And more even than 70, 72, 73% of people say that they have real physical symptoms because of this emotional stress, because of this emotional overload. And that's why I want to bring up today some of these causes of that stress, right? And what can trigger it. So sometimes even in the workplace, we can have these things that can definitely cause us a lot of stress. And that is something that I can relate to. You all probably can relate to that. And there's different things that we can do about it. And today, at the end of this episode, I will address 5 things that we can do at the workplace to avoid some of that stress. 40% again say it's really office stress. 40% of Americans, my friends, say it's office stress. And that is sometimes the biggest source of their life. It can just be things like you might be unhappy in your job. It might be just something that you just really don't want to do. And it is not really your dream job. Um, a big thing is having a heavy workload or too much responsibility and being able to uh, or feeling that you want to do it. It makes you feel maybe good, but it's just too much. It brings you in overload, right? And therefore, another point is that you are working long, long, long hours. It might have to do with the people that are your upper management, superiors, your direct leaders, right? It might be poor management. It might be unclear expectations of what you have to do, what your work entails, what is your job description. And you cannot say no in the decision-making process. Sometimes you get thrown into a situation where you're not really knowing what is expected of you, or what is really the description of that job, right? But you're just getting after it and trying to make right because you want to look good in that position. Sometimes it can be, a lot of people experience this, and we don't think about this a lot. You can work under dangerous conditions, and think about people that are in the electricity world, people that are in uh, firemen, right? Police officers. It can be people that are in construction jobs, overseas, on the ocean, things like that. But I can just imagine, you know, coming up with in my thoughts. I mean, I would really be scared. It would be a lot of stress to me to work in the middle of the ocean because I have that fear of that big, wide ocean water, right? Sometimes it might be just insecure because you really don't know if you can grow in the position that you work in. And there might always be a risk of termination. I have been in that situation where there was constant risk of termination. And if that hangs over your head, that is a very difficult thing to deal with. I can tell you, I found that very difficult. And facing discrimination or harassment at work, especially if your company is not supportive of what you're doing, it's really just causing a lot of stress. You take it home, basically. You're taking it home. You're thinking about it constantly. You don't really know how to change it, but it causes a lot of pressure and a lot of pain sometimes, a lot of grief sometimes. It creates a lot of gossipy content, right? Where you have the need to talk to people about it because you're just really feeling unhappy in the situation. At other times, it might just be stress because you don't really know how to stand up or how to handle it, to get out of it. And sometimes it might just be the number one thing that people usually experience as very stressful, and it is just speaking in public. It's a lot of it's difficult for people, and a lot of people find that the number one difficulty that causes them stress. And this was just related to work, so that is not always, the situation that you have to talk. But standing up for yourself and doing something about it might cause a lot of stress because if you don't handle it right, that might be, you know, a loss for you. It might be a loss for you. Life stresses are something different, and at the same time, the same. It might overlap, it might just be that particular thing in life. And well, if we're just mentioning a few, it might be the death of a loved one. It might be a divorce or a separation situation that you have gone through. It might have been that job loss and this and thus a lot of time related, which I see in my practice with my patients and my clients, a lot of times related. That loss of job is also an increase in financial obligations and sometimes not able to meet those financial obligations, right? So this just, you have to start something new that costs money. Maybe you have to move. All that new startup stuff is expensive. It costs money. And if you have to do that, then if you can really meet up to that, that is just a major, major cost. A lot of my clients would mention a financial situation or a career or a job situation as the number one cause of their stress. And if that stress gets super out of hand and if it just keeps going and going and going, that leads to depression. That might lead to depression. That might be to lead to a situation where you don't really want to get out of bed anymore. And depression is one of those situations where if you feel that that is entering your life, you can recognize that by, for instance, thinking constantly that nobody cares and you don't care. You lose a sense of involvement. You lose a sense of caring for your loved ones, your family, your job, your career, the things that you would love to dream of. You lose a sense of involvement and connection and caring. And honestly, you feel, if you're depressed, you feel that nobody else cares as well, right? So this is really one of these things where um, you lose basically touch with the wider and the bigger world, and you don't want to ask for help in some cases, and that is us. That's what we do. uh, I was very good at not asking for help in my past. And I remember that I came from uh, a background of thinking that you can get through it. You just, it makes you stronger. You just have to do it. But we definitely cannot do everything alone. And I have definitely seen it over the last 20 years that asking for support is a great thing to do. Another thing that might cause of stress, which is happiness, but it's also stress related, is moving into a new home or getting married. And that might be one of these anxiety times, but at the same time, it might lead to sleepless nights. It might lead to all these physical causes of or physical symptoms of stress related health problems, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's sometimes chronic illness and injury and emotional loss. If you're grieving, if you have guilt, low self-esteem, all these emotional problems can be caused by stress and can cause stress by itself. Taking care, being a caretaker of a family member or somebody who is sick is very stressful and very underestimated. So we also have to take that into account, that taking care of an elderly or a sick family member is sometimes even traumatic on the caretaker. Mm, We just don't think about that a lot. We think it's our duty. We think we love to do it, but it's also very stressful. And sometimes we forget what that is doing to us. So it's one of these things to kind of keep under control, or keep talking about, or keep asking for help, more help. Sometimes we just need to say, hey, to another sister or brother, can you help out with this caregiving thing? Because it's very important that I take care of myself as well. The last thing that causes a lot of stress, that is, of course, traumatic events and disaster events, natural disasters, theft, physical traumatic events, rape or violence, and that many times leads to huge amounts of stress, huge amounts of physical implications, and long-term depression. And in a lot of cases, to even substance abuse, right, addiction, things like that. I talk about that a lot, and I have had many shows talking about the symptoms of uh, stress, anxiety that lead to addiction. Sometimes even stress comes from the inside. If we're thinking about these factors, it is stressful if you're constantly um, thinking um, about fear and uncertainty. If you're constantly trying to um, take all that in from the outside. For instance, if I watch the news a lot and there's a lot of terror attack and war situations and just this global warming and the threats of toxic chemicals and all that thing, those big things um, can kind of get me a little worked up into a stress situation where I just don't know what's going to happen in the future. And if I stay there too long and I don't address it, I don't address my own thoughts, it can lead to this inner fear, inner uncertainty that I constantly carry. And I want to address that because that is not a very healthy situation, definitely, because you have no control. I have no control over these events. The things that I can control are my own little circle of love, right? And I can control giving and caring, but I cannot take control of these big events. And it can be very stressful and very uncertain if you carry that around. Sometimes it's just my or your attitude or perception. Sometimes we think we are doing a good job, and it's actually not really being seen that way, right? It's not really appreciated, and something completely different was expected, or you are thinking the other way around, that you are constantly incompetent to do the job or the task ahead. And you just have a low self-esteem there, right? Some of the inner things that cause a lot of anxiety and stress are unrealistic expectations. No one is perfect. Let's be imperfectly perfect, right? Let's be a little nicer to ourselves, because if you think that you need to do things right all the time, then you feel so stressed out and things will not go as expected. So that is a really, really, really big thing that we have to take into account. And also just a major, major life change from the inside out, even just moving or taking a new position, going far away, traveling, a job promotion, that can cause a lot of stress inside. If we keep it inside, it will cause harm. That is just a big thing that I want you to remember, because it has so much effect on our health. And I will go a little bit into that, because that stressful situation, whatever that causes, right? All these things that I just discussed, your body is always launching that physical response. And when your nervous system just springs into action and just released all those hormones, that it is giving that reaction of that fight or flight reaction, right? That fight or flight response. And in a stressful situation, you may notice that those physical symptoms, your heartbeat goes up, you're starting to sweat, that kind of stress is short term and can be temporarily, but it will also have some long-term effects if you don't recover quickly from it, if you don't recognize what you can do in that situation. Long-term, many, many shows I did about that, the long-term effects of your mindset for your health. Because that, just a pain, trauma, a long history of grief can actually sit in your body, and not just the smaller stress factors that we experience every day that I just talked about, but also definitely those big things, those big situations of change, those big situations that might even look fabulous, but that cause so much reactions and response in your body physically. So your stress system, if that stays overactivated for a long period of time, that is what we would call that chronic stress. And that chronic stress can definitely lead to more serious health problems. It usually starts with headaches. It usually starts with fatigue. It starts with a difficulty sleeping, a difficulty concentrating. In many, many, many cases, we have an upset stomach. All right, our intestines will tell us that we are not really processing the situation very well. We can get irritable. We can get, we have those days that we're just not nice. And that is definitely related to that. It's definitely the response that we feel that is a cause of stress. And in the long term, if that is really not addressed, the chronic stress can definitely lead to depression, high blood pressure, um, abnormal heartbeat, the hardening of the arteries, and heart disease, right? Heart disease, big, heart attack, big, big causes here of death in the United States. Heartburn and irritable bowel syndrome are causes of stress. An upset stomach, I just talked about that, right? Cramps, constipation, all that fun stuff. Sometimes we have huge um, varieties in weight gain or weight loss. And if that is kind of the yo-yo effect that we talk about, I've seen that with clients, of course, also in my fitness career, a long, long, long over years and decades, that people were just going, up and down about that diet, but it was actually just coming from stress. They couldn't really control the weight loss, or they couldn't control eating and weight gain. And that had to do sometimes with stress. There are definitely changes in sex drive, there are changes in hormones, and there are so fertility problems. Do I say that right? Yes, fertility problems might be caused by very stressful times that are, for instance, you want a baby really bad and you're working on it. You want to get pregnant, um, It is not possible. It leads to more stress and anxiety. You're just really worried about constantly, why not, why not, why not, why not? You're thinking, it's the negative effects of your thinking. It causes chronic stress. It leads definitely to those times where you are feeling that it will just never happen. It has to do with many, many more factors like negative thinking and things like that. But all that has to do with it, all that has to do with chronic stress. We have sometimes flare-ups of asthma, flare-ups of psoriasis, arthritis, skin problems, right? Like that psoriasis. Do I say that right? Psoriasis. Yeah, yeah. And managing that stress, trying to find out where it comes from, can make a real difference to your health. So all these things I discussed are definitely detrimental to your physical health. And if we can just dissect that a little bit, what is it with me? What am I going through? How can I be nice to myself? How can I take it a step back? How can I control that more? If you recognize these things, I always say, if you start recognizing what you are going through and accept it, and be nice about it, right? Forgive yourself for the fact that it is the case and try to find out how you can really, relatively to the case, find a way to make it way more acceptable for yourself. Then you are way ahead of the rest of the gang. A lot of people with heart disease, proven in studies, it has showed a lot of people with heart disease lived longer if they underwent some kind of a stress management program. And that is something that you can do with me, for instance, as a life coach. So if you are interested in that, then definitely reach out to me. I want to close this session today with just some exercise or some tips, some very effective ways to deal with very high stress jobs. Number one, always back to that breathing. Do all the time deep breathing exercises. It has so many benefits. I've talked about that many, many times. Start with the box breath, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 exhale, 4 hold, counts, that is, and not minutes. And if you are doing that, and you do that a couple of times, you feel settled, you feel calmer, and you feel that you're more in control. So that is always the number one thing. Just start breathing and start being aware of that breath. Being aware in the exercise. That's why we call it an exercise. You have to kind of do it, sit down for it, and do it a couple of times. Really just focus and concentrate and listen to your breath. And the second time is always music, happy music, outdoors, just get to those things that you really love to do. Get out and do it. Number three is very important. We talk about this a lot. It was a word that is not really, when I grew up, it was not really um, something that we knew. It was kind of like the counter thing of being available for 24 hours, right? Which was in the days very glorified. But nowadays we talk about boundaries, which means that you can say no. It means that you can say, I need to set boundaries for myself. If my job is from 9 to 5, I am leaving at 5. I need to recharge. I need to separate my personal life from my business. I need to set the norm right here. So I'm going home and do nothing at home, right? That is very important to set those boundaries. Number four, stop taking on extra responsibilities and stop taking being a superhero and say yes to everything, right? Number three, number four, just take time to decrease that multitasking a little bit. Multitasking is great if you can do it, but sometimes it decreases efficiency, and it is not really good for your health as well. Taking on too much responsibility is not good for us. So we have to kind of like let that go a little bit. And then the last one, my favorite, use all your vacation time, use all your time off. Use all your PTO, schedule your mental health days, schedule those days off and do something completely different. We really have to start doing that in order to manage our own stress and to manage our own happiness. And for that reason, because that is so important. We like to say yes, right? We like to help a buddy out. I love that. I've always been for that, right? I've always been actually doing a little bit more than expected, and I love that. I love that that was my MO, just staying a little bit later, help a buddy out, right? And stay there and be good to somebody else. But if that is starting to affect your own physical or mental health, and you feel stressed out, then we need to just stop doing that. And you have to find a balance there, right? Of being the good guy and sometimes the bad guy. We have to find that balance because in our world, my friends, right now, we are so over everything, over dot dot dot. I mean, overstressed, over medicated, overhyped, right? Overworked, over everything. So I should call this get over it and be really, really wonderful, nice to yourself. Nice to yourself. Take some time to reset and recharge all the time. And, find that balance. Find that balance. I love my win win women. And I'm so happy you're watching today. I'm so happy you're watching this episode whenever you are watching it, whenever you can. Follow me on social media and find me on elianhaan.com or on Linktree, Elian Haan, and reach out if you need help. Reach out if you need help with your stress, managing your chronic stress, depression, grief, or trauma. You can find me and just let me know. Let me know what you need. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and then I will see you next week on Alien's Joy, bringing a little bit joy one day at a time.